Alrighty, so welcome to my Spear and Void Gauntlet Paladin PvP build. This is honestly probably my favorite build that I've made in really any MMO or RPG game. It is very thorough and very thought out. There's going to be a lot to go over, but I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making the build. So with all that out of the way, let's jump into the build. So normally I would show off the attributes first, but I wanted to take a look at the actual weapons and the abilities for those, and then we'll take a look at everything else from there. So as you know, paladins generally have a specific set of traits assigned to them in really any game that they're in. They're usually tanky, and they can provide a lot of heals and buffs to their allies. But being that this is a Void Paladin, we're kind of the inverse of that. So we deal a lot of damage. We are still tanky through buffs that we can provide to ourselves. But I believe we can provide almost every single type of debuff in the game, aside from the elemental ones like poison and flame. Being that this is a spear focused build, there's a lot of kind of drawbacks that come with the spear, especially if you're trying to make it your main weapon. So everything in the build, aside from getting damage, is kind of trying to mitigate all of those weaknesses of the spear, but we'll go over that in a second here. As you know, Spear and Void Gauntlet are not weapons that scale on the same stats. Spear scales on Dex and Strength, and Void Gauntlet scales on Int and Focus. So being able to get the use out of both of those weapons was a pretty hard task to do. But starting it off, the main thing that allowed that to be possible was the ultimate ability or the capstone ability on the Impaler tree. So basically, for each debuff on your opponent, you can deal up to 30% bonus damage. And as I mentioned, we can apply a lot of debuffs. So this is the main thing that the build, when it comes to damage, was focused around. Now, one of the main weaknesses that Spear has is its mobility. It has essentially none. And the Void Gauntlet also doesn't have any mobility. So that was something that I needed to make sure there was something we addressed when it came to actually filling out the entire build. Skewer is the only gap closer that the spear has. Javelin is a nice ability as well. It allows you to kind of deal with people at range, but you need some sort of mobility, not only for offensive purposes, for being able to chase people down, but also for yourself to be able to survive, getting out of grav walls and getting away from opponents who are trying to kill you when you're low. So Skewer is one of the most important abilities here. Aside from the mobility aspect of it, it's also one of the things that opens up a lot of the damage for us. It applies a bleed, but on top of that, we are running a weapon perk for this, which is Enfeebling Skewer, which also makes it apply Weaken. So if you can land a Skewer on somebody, right off the bat, you are applying 2 debuffs on them, which is giving you a 20% increase to your bonus damage. Now, if you hit somebody who's full, generally what I try to do is start out with a Skewer in a fight if I can. You'll be able to do more damage, excuse me. And then if it crits, you also get a pretty chunky Empower. So this is a really powerful ability for the build. I didn't opt to go for Deep Wound because there's a lot of useful perks that we're going to go over here in a second. But we also have Volt, Kick, and Sweep with all of the passives for those. Now, when it comes to the passives, it's also a pretty important part. I kind of went back and forth between the ones that I've been using, but this is kind of what I've landed on, and I feel it helps out in all the areas that we need. So starting out on the Impaler tree, we have Finishing Blows to just deal more damage and help out finished targets. Unerring Precision is amazing because grit builds are probably your biggest counter If you can't find openings to land stuns on a strength build, you're going to find it really hard to be able to deal damage to them. So this will make our light attacks deal a lot more damage to strength players, which is really, really nice. Aggressive maneuvers. This is a almost a no-brainer. Usually you want to get aggressive maneuvers and refreshing jabs just to be able to get as much cooldown reduction as possible, but there's a lot of other perks that I wanted to get. So out of the two, I felt aggressive maneuvers was the more value one, because if you can get a dodge into a vault kick, you can get a really, really big cooldown reduction on all your abilities, because you're getting 20% from aggressive maneuvers, and then if you land a vault kick, you get an additional 30%. So these two perks right here are pretty big for cooldown reduction. And then the last one that we have is exposed wounds, just to give us critical chance for somebody who's bleeding, which we will usually have somebody bleeding because of a skewer. Now, taking a look at the zoner tree, we have Deadly Reach. Evasive maneuvers is a really, really important perk. It is this and some other perks are going to be the thing that allow us to stay alive for as long as we do on the build. So dodging backwards, we get less stamina. We also have invigorating crits, so we can restore crits on hit, stamina on crits, excuse me. And then we also have strong conditioning. So a lot of things going into our stamina regen. But as we're going to see in a couple of clips a little bit later on, it really, really does make a difference. And then the last one here is Merciless Strength. Now for the Void Gauntlet tree, it is a very, very interesting weapon. It's a weapon that I've been wanting to try and make use of for quite a while. And it does a lot for you. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the Decay tree. So we've got Orb of Decay. This is a really, really powerful ability. Not only does it apply Rend, it also applies a slow onto enemies if we have them in any sort of debuff. And as I mentioned, we can apply a lot of debuffs. And this is also going to be one of the things that goes into helping the weakness of our build that I mentioned, which is mobility. So this is going to help us catch up to opponents a lot. And then Detonating Orb is you're going to find yourself using both versions of this a lot. So basically, if you aren't aware, if you let the orb come back to you without pressing anything, it'll turn into a healing orb, which you can then press again, and then it turns into a heal. But if you reactivate the ability before it comes back, it explodes again for damage, and then it applies Rend again. So it really depends on what's happening in the fight. If you are in a situation where you have the advantage and you're trying to press a kill, then I would generally use the detonating version of it to damage them. But a lot of times we'll end up using the healing version of this because it gives us a lot of heals to stack with the rest of our heals. Now we also have Mending Evasion, dodging with full mana on our Void Gauntlet bar also heals us. Leeching Bolts, so if we land a heavy attack, that also heals us as well. And because it heals based on the damage we dealt, I've also gone for Deadly Range just to increase the damage of our heavy attacks. And then lastly, we have Extended Suffering, just to, as it says here, just extend the duration of debuffs if we're in kind of a neutral state where the opponent was able to kind of make space from us. Now, for the Annihilation tree, we have obviously Petrifying Scream and Oblivion, but I kind of want to break down these two abilities here for a second. Both of them are extremely powerful, and knowing how and when to use them is pretty crucial. Now, Oblivion gives you a Empower while it's down, which is nice, but it also does two other really major things. So if you attack somebody while they're in the Oblivion, you apply Weaken, which adds to our tankiness because you're dealing less damage to us, and also applies another debuff, increasing our damage because of that spear passive. And then on top of that, we get 15 stamina per second. So this is going to be huge. Utilizing our Oblivion and trying to get the most value out of this is going to be the thing that keeps you alive a lot of the time, because dodging is going to be, for really any build, how you stay alive a lot of the time. But we have to dodge a lot more than most builds because of, like I said, that mobility. And a lot of the times what you're going to find is when you finally reach your target, you're usually out of stamina from having to dodge or dodge range attacks or whatever it is. So having Oblivion to pretty much give you back your stamina to allow you to fight is really, really nice. And this ties into all of those stamina regen perks that we had on our left side of our spear tree here. So jumping in, being low on stamina, landing a crit, and then dropping Oblivion will net us almost our entire stamina bar. And then we also have conditioning as well to kind of increase that regeneration. So Oblivion is huge for our stam regen. And then Scream, obviously it's a root which extends our combos, but it also gives us Fortify. So when you are in situations where you have a lot of enemies on you or you're low, landing a Scream on opponents who are chasing you, usually they don't expect it because they will see you low, and getting multiple stacks of Fortify is huge, and it makes us very, very tanky when we're low, and it allows us to stay alive. Now, as for the passives, Refreshing Frailty is a actually really, really good passive that we can get a lot of value out of, because as I mentioned, once again, we apply a lot of debuffs. So when you're trying to get that ranged heal from opponents, or even just trying to poke somebody when they're at range, especially off of switching from your spear bar, a lot of times we'll have 3 debuffs on them. So this will allow us to reduce the cooldowns of these abilities, because they all have decently long cooldowns. So Refreshing Frailty, Empowering Proximity is also really, really nice, because we are only ever really using these 2 abilities when somebody is in 5 meters of us. So we'll usually always get this when we use one of those 2. Leeching Agony is a no-brainer, and again, just adds to more healing. Refreshing Precision, and Keen Confidence. I haven't gone for any of the capstone or ultimate abilities here, because oftentimes we are not staying on our Void Gauntlet bar for that long. It's usually we'll switch, use an ability or 2, and get the dodge heal, and then switch back. And the thing about both of these abilities is, if you switch weapons before you get max stack and you use the ultimate, then you lose all of your stacks. And it works like that for both. It would be really, really nice to be able to use something like Void Collar. This would allow us to stay alive even more on the build, but it's just really, really hard to build up 6 stacks unless we have like 5 to 6 people on us, and in that case, usually not fighting them, we're trying to get away. So it's the reason why I opted for just going for mainly passives on the Void Gauntlet. Now, taking a look at our attributes, as I mentioned, these weapons do not scale off of the same stat. So when it came to Spear, not only does it is it our main weapon that has quite a few weaknesses like mobility, but it's the only thing that we have to rely on to secure kills or get our damage from, because our Void Gauntlet is really only giving us debuffs and heals and utility like stamina regen. So I wanted to try and maximize as much of the spear kit as I could. So first off, we have 50 strength to get that 10% buff to our light and heavy attacks. It's mainly really only light attacking on the build, but light attacks is honestly most of the damage of our build. You're going to see a lot, as you saw in the earlier clip, but as we're going to kind of dive into in the PvP commentary, utilizing your light attacks is really, really important, because you can't just run around trying to stun lock people and get kills like that, because with some of the changes that have been made, you can't just stun people back to back to back. So we wanted to make sure that we can buff our light and heavy attacks. Now, when it came to our abilities, I wanted to make sure that I got the 250 point passive here. It buffs our critical hit damage when we have somebody stunned, which is really, really nice from our Volt Kick. And we also slow people and root them as well from our Void Gauntlet. So this is going to add quite a bit of damage. And then I also wanted to get the 50 point passive on Intelligence just to buff our critical damage overall as well, just to make those sweeps a little bit meatier. And then this also works for all the other damage of our build. So as you can see, we have 1207 weapon damage for our spear, and this is really the way that I found I was able to get away with running weapons that don't scale together. Now, as for the Void Gauntlet, you may notice that we don't have that much focus, but as you saw in that first clip there, or the opening showcase, we still have a ton of heals. And the reason for that is I didn't put all of my eggs in one basket, if you may. We didn't try to go for one or two abilities that heal us for a large amount. We have 5, 6, or 7 different sources of healing that we can kind of cycle through to keep us alive. And that's the reason why we only have 18 focus here. Everything else was kind of making sure we got the passives that we wanted to get here, as well as having 150 constitution for that critical hit damage reduction. And then everything else that I had, I just dumped into focus here. Now, taking a look at the gear, in addition to the 3 or 4 sources of healing that we get from our Void Gauntlet, I've also opted to go for a Shirking Heals setup. So we are running 3-piece Shirking Heals, and then we're also running 2-piece Shirking Fortification to just add to our tankiness a little bit more. Originally, when I was running this build, I had run I was running 5-piece heals, Shirking Heals, but I found that I needed a little bit more tankiness, especially being that I'm in light armor and I like to play solo. So I found that the 3 and 2 setup is actually very, very nice, and it's a really nice balance for this build. So this nets us, I think, about 600 to 700 health, which is similar to our Orb of Decay heal, and our Void Gauntlet heal as well, that we get when we dodge on that. So that's what we're running for the gear. On top of having Shirking Heals and all of those Void Gauntlet heals, you're also running Healthy Toast. So when we drink a mana potion, we get even more health. I got one that had Nimble as well, so that stacks us even more with our Spear utility passives. I've gone for Divine as well on the Amulet, so even more healing, or just to increase the amount of healing that we're getting. And then I've gone for the Champion's Ring. Now, the really cool thing about this build is the Shirking Heals pieces are from the PvP track, and if you kind of fancy yourself more of a bruiser, this build it excels at playing with a group and playing as that bruiser role. And the PvP track actually drops medium versions of this set, medium and heavy, excuse me. So if you wanted to go for a medium setup instead of a light setup, you could definitely do that. It's something that I tried to run to see if it was viable, and it definitely is. But we're going to take a look at more PvP clips just to see what I mean by how effective this can be as a bruiser. But as for our weapons, now the spear is usually, I say there's different options that you have when it comes to weapons and perks. But for this build in particular, this is really the only option that I found was possible. Enfeebling Skewer on the weapon after the buff is amazing. So, like I said, we have a lot of things to keep us tanky. We have the passives from our Void Gauntlets, 2-piece Shirking Fortification, and then on top of that, Skewer applies a 44% weaken now. So this can really allow us to stay alive for a lot longer than we should in light armor, which is amazing. It also has Vicious and Keen Speed. Keen Speed also got buffed this patch. It gives us 20% haste for 10 seconds, and the cooldown starts when it activates, so it pretty much can have an 100% uptime. And this as well goes into helping mitigate the weakness of our spear, which is mobility. You get this from getting 200 engineering, and it was a grind for sure, but I definitely feel it is what will get you the most value for the build. Prior to that, I was running just Skewer and Vicious while I was leveling up my engineering, and it worked, but there's definitely a lot of situations that I found if I had Keen Speed as well, it really rounded out a lot of those situations where we're fighting builds that have more mobility than us. As for the Void Gauntlet, we've gone for Blessed, so this as well is going to buff all of our heals actually. So Blessed is a perk that works when your weapon is sheathed, and it applies to anything that heals you. So this buffs not only the heal from our mana potion, but our shirking heals as well. So getting Blessed on your Void Gauntlet is huge. Nullifying Oblivion is the perk that I wanted to go for on the weapon because of how much value that I mentioned that you get from that. And I managed to find one that also had plate crits, just to be able to apply another debuff on top of that. It'll probably be pretty hard to find something that has all three of these perks, but Nullifying Oblivion and Blessed are definitely the two that I would say are the main ones that you would need for the build. But yeah, that is the abilities, the gear, and the stats. Now let's jump into some of that PvP footage. And sorry, I think I probably forget this every single time that I'm going over my builds, but the gems. So I find there's usually a lot of discussion around the gems still for some reason. The gems are probably one of the only things in the game that are really preference based. If you are a frontline bruiser, for example, and you find that you are taking mainly physical damage from, let's say, the other bruisers and the dex players, and you would want to get more physical reduction, then it would make sense to get more onyx gems or physical resistance. If you find that on your server there's just more mages for whatever reason, or you just want to try and counter one type of build, then you could go for elemental gems. But as for myself, I like to play solo, and when you play solo, you don't know what you'll end up going up against. I could go up against a dex player, a strength player, or an int player. So I just wanted to make sure that I have damage resistances that could cover all the bases, because, as I mentioned, I don't know what I'll end up fighting. So my gems are just aiming to try and get 10% in each resistance. And then when it comes to the weapons, I've gone for a Void Gem just to go with the theme of the build. And honestly, you can pretty much run whatever you want on the Void Gauntlet. As I mentioned, it's not a main source of our damage. I kind of cycled through a couple of different gems. We will never get the value out of the diamond gem. Wilderness, excuse me. Wilderness in a weapon gives you a healing bonus, but it only gives it to you if your health is full. So that is a gem that we can't use in the Void Gauntlet. I tried out Retaliation, but it's pretty much either Retaliation or Gambit is what I found to work. So when it comes to playing the build, honestly, the combos might seem a little bit intimidating at first, especially once you start playing the build, because it's going to be pretty easy to kind of mess up the combo and not do things that feel like they're in order or smooth. But aside from the abilities themselves, the first and probably most important thing that I can say about the build is getting comfortable with dodge. As you know, on any build, the dodge is a universal mechanic, and it's going to be one of the things that keeps you alive. But for this build in particular, the dodge is huge. It's what gives us access to a lot of our tankiness, which is that shirking fortification, but also two of our main heals, which is that shirking heals and the heal from dodging on our Void Gauntlet bar. Not only that, but it helps you set up your spear abilities a little bit better. But jumping into this first clip here, we end up taking out that first player there, and we've got a little bit of a respawn wave. So we just make our way behind this little rock here just to give ourselves a little bit of line of sight. And I drop the Oblivion just to give myself a little bit of stamina back. But we jump in, land the Skewer. Because of the Skewer, we apply 2 of those debuffs, and we get a huge sweep in there. Because our sweep, critical hits, we get the keen speed from our spear. As I jumped down there, you see I slowed him with the Orb of Decay. So he was slowed and we had keen speed. So it was pretty easy for us to catch up to him, and we were able to finish him off there pretty easily. But I don't even know, I can't see how many enemies there are, and I'm taking a lot of pressure right now. So I decided to just go ahead and retreat from this fight, and using that Skewer. And as you can see, we get that shirking fortification to make it to where we don't take too much damage, and we're able to just pretty much sustain ourselves throughout the fight. But we find ourselves back with that first player that we jumped into, and I just go ahead and try and go for that combo again. Seeing that bow player up there, I sidestep his ability, and we dodge his second ability as well, getting a nice little heal and dodging some incoming damage. I try to read when his parry is going to come out, but I take a huge rain of arrows there, and I'm getting pelted by this NPC there. So we land the Void Scream just to get that Fortify, root him for a little bit, and give us a little bit of breathing room. And we're just going to go ahead and cycle through our potions here. We see we pop the Mana Potion. I get the heal from our Orb of Decay. A little bit of footwork here while dodging, and we're able to pretty much regen a really big chunk of our health here. But we're still taking shots from both the NPC, and we have another one on us. So I need to just try and get around this rock here. We use the Skewer and the Volt Kick just to give us a little bit of safety here. And again, just right back to full. I try to go for a little cheeky scream there to see if I can catch him off guard, but he does a really good job of avoiding it. And we still have this NPC kind of pelting us here. So we go in to get that heal from our Orb of Decay, jump in with that Skewer, so he now has 2 debuffs. We do a really nice job of reading that parry again, and do a good chunk of damage, but he heals, and again, we're just getting pelted from this NPC. So again, I try to go for a scream, land a Skewer, dodge the ability, light attack into the sweep, and that's all she wrote. So really powerful build that not only staying alive, but once you're able to line up those debuffs on opponents and your stun combos and stuns, you can really do a number. So yeah, the insane amount of debuffs, heals, and damage we're able to put out really makes this a scary build to go up against, and is what makes it viable solo. But as I also mentioned, this all those things can provide a ton of value to your team if you're playing as a bruiser. So you see we have a really big brawl on Sun right now, and they're doing a pretty good job of keeping us locked out. Somebody lands a Scream, we go for the Volt Kick just to help get this tank down. We're able to put in a lot of damage, and it looks like we're able to buy ourselves an opening. Kind of just dodge our way through there, and we're going to go ahead and start going to work. So I jump in there, try to go for a Scream on the healer. We get jumped by a couple of enemies, and we are getting heals, so I'm just going to go around, do a couple of dodges. You see we're pelting this bowman who is on us. We do a really good job of taking him out. Go on to the second bowman who we see in the corner, land the combo on him, put him in the mixer, and we're able to take out 2 players pretty much right off the bat. And then I'm going to go ahead and try to see if I can target some more healers here. I see one low health player kind of just stroll by me, so we're going to go ahead and see if we can take him out. Land the Volt Kick that my teammates are probably going to be able to capitalize off of, and I try to see if I can finish off that kill, but he manages to get away. We just jump right back in. We jump down that Oblivion, which is providing all those bonuses to our teammates as well. And as long as we're able to land a stun combo on somebody, somebody in the group will see it, and they'll get taken out. But we manage to take stun. We push out, and being that we are in light armor, we have a little bit more of ability than our teammates do. So I jump right into the enemy team there, playing a little bit aggressive here, but we are managing to stay alive. Jump in, we get a fat Void Scream on a lot of them. And also do a really good job of dodging and making my way outside of the fight and not dying as we pick up that first player that I got low. But we are too overzealous there, and we do end up getting taken out. But as you see there, it went from pretty much a stalemate to allowing our team to just push all the way through to the enemy point there. And again, just to see how much momentum you can provide for your team, we have a situation in another match here where we're getting just demolished by the other enemy team and getting pushed to Moon. And I'm going to go ahead and see if we can again try and find an opening and provide some value where we can to help our team push. We managed to stop the Volt Kick on the Gredex player who's trying to go for our backline. I take the heavy attack, but we get shot by a musket as well. But we check a potion and a dodge, and it pretty much drank a health potion, or might as well have. We land the Scream to interrupt his ability there, land the Skewer, 2 light attacks later, and we're able to take him out. And we're going to go ahead and turn our attention over to the rest of the Zerg now. And it looks like they were able to finish off a few of those players who were in the back of our base, and it seems like we got some respawn helpers. So we're going to go ahead and try and make our way to the front of the pack again and start pushing down this back line here. Both medium and light armor have different positives and negatives here. As you can tell, being in that we're in light armor, situations like this when we're advancing on the enemy team and we just wiped a couple of players, we can really utilize the mobility from that light armor. You see, we go ahead and try to go in for a stun. We land the Volt Kick on 2, and again, we're playing a little bit aggressive, and we get some back from our teammates as they're right behind us. But as we jump on the point, there you see we take a little bit of damage, and I decided to just heal up a little bit. But medium armor here would be the thing that would allow you to be a lot more brawly and tankier on point. But you see, I jump onto the healer, we land a Skewer, light attack into the sweep. We have a mage who sees us following up, so we end up taking out that healer incredibly fast. Jump onto another healer, into the Scream, into the Oblivion, and when you're playing on point and somebody sees you starting that stun lock combo, you can pretty much take out whatever target you want, which is really nice. So it's usually healers that I'm trying to go for first. But we land the Skewer on this brawler who's in the middle of our team. And as we started to clear out the rest of the players there, it looks like we are able to push our way through Sun. But yeah, when you're playing with the team, it's an incredibly fun build. And for the last clip here, we're going to get to see, again, the pretty much full kit of the build in action. You're out in a Shattered Mountain, doing a little bit of mining, and we have a little bit of a 1v1. But we have a couple of enemies aggroed on us as well, and you see we do a pretty good job of avoiding a lot of their damage with our dodges. We land the Scream and we put down that Oblivion to start the combo, but being that he has that hatchery, he's able to break out of it. We land the second sweep there, and the NPC ends up taking him out. But when you're playing solo, the thing that makes you incredibly tanky is not only dodging to get that shirking fortification, but it's landing that Skewer. The 44% weaken plus the shirking fortification is what allows us to be so tanky. But we're back at it again as we are in a very bad spot. We're pretty much half health or lower as he jumps back onto us. But again, doing a really good job of avoiding all of these NPCs that are trying to attack us. And I do a decent job of landing the Volt Kick, but we're just getting pelleted by AoEs and the NPC attacks. So I just retreat for a little bit, get the heal from that Orb of Decay, and bring ourselves back to full. Sees he's kind of committing to the fight, so we go ahead and drop that Oblivion. And he kind of walks right into our sweep, so we apply a decent amount of damage and force that health potion out of there. Cancel that Hatchet ability with the Scream. And we're kind of just in the middle of a brawl right now. I kind of run myself out of stamina, so it's what kind of stops our momentum there. But we read the ability to cancel our heavy attack with the dodge, but he does the same and lands the dodge on us as well. And we're gonna go for that Oblivion. Just kind of cycle back between those spear combos and dropping that Oblivion pretty much anytime it's available. But this is one of the hardest counters for our builds. Not only is he a grit player, but he has Hatchet, which he has to be able to break out of our stuns. But as long as we're able to reliably keep up that skewer, you see we're able to keep ourselves alive, even though we're taking just a ton of pressure from this guy here. And being that we have skewer on him and that he's in medium armor, we reduce his damage to the point to where we're able to just sustain a lot of that. But we're at the point where we are about to proc his ultimate. A lot of the NPCs are down, so we can kind of just commit to this fight. We land the root, which kind of gives us a little bit of breathing room. And after that point, it's going to be all she wrote, as he ends up running himself out of resources there. But yeah, just an incredibly fun build to play. But yeah, easily one of my favorite builds that I've ever made. I hope if you have any interest in the build that you have as much fun as I did making it. But if you have any questions at all, please let me know in the comments. We've got a ton more builds on the way, so if you are not subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.